The first thing missing from my daughter's bedroom was not her bed. It was the evidence that a bed had ever stood there. No dents marked the carpet, no glow-in-the-dark stars clung to the ceiling. The bookshelf I had assembled during my final month of pregnancy was gone, along with the crooked brass knob my daughter had painted blue. Even the walls had been repainted a flat, unfamiliar gray. I remained in the doorway with my travel bag hanging from one shoulder. "Where is Lily?" My husband Grant stopped several feet behind me. His answer came too quickly. "Who's Lily?" I turned around. He was holding a dish towel, though there were no dishes in his hands. He looked older than he had during our last video call, thinner around the face, unshaven along his jaw, but he was still wearing the brown sweater I had given him for Christmas. "Our daughter," I said. Grant stared at me with a patience that felt rehearsed. "Claire, we don't have a daughter." I had spent the previous 4 months coordinating emergency response flights for the Coast Guard from a temporary operations center in Alaska. My work required me to notice inconsistencies while other people were panicking. An aircraft number entered incorrectly, a fuel estimate that did not match the distance, a weather report copied from the wrong station. That training kept me from screaming. It also made me notice the pale rectangle near the baseboard. The new paint had not fully covered a spot where Lily's height chart had been taped to the wall. At the bottom edge, written in my handwriting, one measurement remained visible: Lily, age 6, 46 inches. Grant stepped into the room and positioned himself between me and the mark. "You've been under a lot of pressure," he said. "You called me 2 weeks ago saying you were confused." "I called because you stopped letting me speak to her." There was no one here to speak to. My phone was already in my hand. I opened the family album. Every photograph of Lily was gone, not hidden, gone. Her first day of school, her missing front tooth, the picture of her asleep against Grant's chest during a delayed flight in Denver. Hundreds of images had disappeared from the shared account. Grant reached toward me. "Give me the phone." I stepped back. That was when fear replaced confusion. Not because he denied Lily existed, but because he seemed to know exactly what I would check first. "Where is she?" I asked again. His expression shifted. For half a second, the concern vanished and something harder appeared beneath it. "You need to rest before you make this worse." "Worse for whom?" He did not answer. I walked into the hallway and called Lily's elementary school. The office line went to voicemail. It was after 6 in the evening, and Monday was a federal holiday. I tried my mother next. Disconnected. Grant followed me downstairs. "You shouldn't contact people until we speak with Dr. Pritchard." I stopped halfway down the staircase. "Who is Dr. Pritchard?" "The psychiatrist you've been seeing." "I have never seen a psychiatrist named Pritchard." Grant lowered his voice. "You signed the treatment plan yourself." On the dining table sat a white folder bearing the name of a behavioral health clinic 40 miles away. Grant opened it and removed a document. My name appeared at the top. The form stated that I suffered from persistent delusions involving an imaginary child. It recommended supervised medical leave and temporary financial guardianship. At the bottom was a signature resembling mine, but the date beside it was March 18. On March 18, I had been aboard a rescue coordination vessel in the Bering Sea, without civilian internet access, surrounded by 11 crew members who could prove exactly where I had been. I did not challenge him. Instead, I photographed the document while pretending to reread it. Then I sent the image to my work email, where Grant could not delete it. "You're right," I said. "I'm tired." His shoulders loosened. That small reaction told me more than his words had. Grant believed I was disoriented enough to accept the life he had prepared for me. He believed 4 months away had made me easy to isolate, and whoever had helped him erase Lily from our home had expected me to doubt my own memory before I questioned theirs. I carried my bag into the guest room and locked the door. Then I reached into the side pocket where I kept emergency contact cards. Lily's school counselor had written her private number on one after a bullying incident the year before. I called it. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. When I gave her my name, she whispered, "Claire, thank God." Then she said the sentence Grant had been trying to prevent me from hearing. "Lily told me her father was taking her somewhere you would never find her." I pressed the phone so hard against my ear that the edge hurt. "Where is she?" "I don't know exactly," the counselor said. Her name was Monica Hale. I remembered her as a careful woman who wore bright scarves and never spoke to children while looking at her computer. "Her grandmother signed her out 11 days ago. The office believed you had approved it." "My mother?" No, Grant's mother, Evelyn. I sat on the guest room floor with my back against the locked door. Monica explained that Lily had become withdrawn during the weeks before she disappeared. She had stopped bringing her reading folder to school. Twice, she had asked whether a child could be sent away if her mother forgot her. Then, on her final morning, Lily had requested to see Monica before class. She said her father was packing her things, Monica told me. She said he had warned her not to mention you because talking about an imaginary mother would make people think she was sick. I closed my eyes. Grant had not merely removed our daughter from the house. He had begun teaching her that I was the person who did not exist. Why didn't you call me? I tried the number in her emergency file. It had been changed. To whose number? I'm not allowed to read the full record over the phone, but I can tell you the last 4 digits. They matched Grant's cell. Monica had contacted Child Protective Services after Lily's warning. A caseworker called the house, but Grant told her Lily was staying with relatives and that I was undergoing treatment after fabricating concerns about a child who was not legally mine. Not legally mine, that was the phrase in the report. Lily was my biological daughter. I had carried her through a complicated pregnancy and spent 17 hours in labor, with Grant sleeping intermittently in a plastic hospital chair beside me. But there was one fact I had spent years trying not to think about. Grant was not Lily's biological father. I had met him when she was 18 months old. Her biological father, Daniel Mercer, had left before she was born and signed a consent for Grant to adopt her when she was 3. I believe the adoption had been completed. Grant had attended meetings with an attorney, brought forms home for me to sign, and presented Lily with a silver bracelet on the day he said the judge had finalized everything. We never received a formal decree in the mail. Grant said the attorney was handling it. I had been newly assigned to a demanding aviation unit then. My mother had recently suffered a stroke, and Grant seemed relieved to take responsibility for the paperwork. I let him. That was my blind spot. I treated trust like a division of labor. When he said something had been handled, I crossed it off my mental list. I ended the call after promising Monica I would not reveal her involvement unless legally necessary. She advised me to contact the police and an attorney. I was reaching for the emergency card again when someone tried the guest room handle. Claire! Grant's voice carried through the door. Who are you talking to? My supervisor. You shouldn't involve your command in a medical issue. I told them I arrived safely. There was a pause. Then he said, Doctor, Pritchard can see us in the morning. Use? He thinks it's important that I'm present. Of course he did. I waited until Grant's footsteps moved away, then opened my work laptop. The Coast Guard did not grant me special access to civilian records, and I had no intention of misusing government systems. But I did have copies of every emergency contact form I had submitted before deployment. On the latest one, completed 3 days before I left, Lily was listed as my daughter. Grant had signed beneath my name as her adoptive father. I saved the document to an encrypted folder and emailed a copy to myself. Then I searched my personal inbox for the attorney who had handled the adoption. His old messages were missing. I checked the trash. Empty. The deletion bothered me, but something else bothered me more. Every Saturday during my deployment, Grant had arranged a video call with Lily. For the first 2 months, she appeared from her bedroom. Then the calls became shorter. The camera remained off. Grant said she was embarrassed by a rash on her face, then claimed the internet was too weak for video. I had accepted each explanation because I wanted peace more than I wanted conflict. I opened my call history and wrote down the dates of every missed or altered call. The pattern began on May 9. That date was familiar. It was the same day Grant had emailed me asking for a scanned copy of Lily's birth certificate, claiming the school needed it for summer camp. I had sent it without asking which camp. Downstairs, a cabinet opened and closed. I slipped the laptop into my bag and went to the window. My car sat in the driveway, but Grant's truck was parked behind it, blocking me in. Beside his rear tire lay a small purple suitcase, Lily's suitcase. A white airline baggage label remained looped around the handle. From where I stood, I could read the destination code, RNO, Reno. Grant's mother did not live in Nevada. Daniel Mercer did. I did not confront Grant about Reno. Confrontation would have satisfied my anger, but it might also have warned him that I knew where to start looking. Instead, I photographed the suitcase through the guest room window, enlarging the baggage label until the flight number became readable. The tag was dated 9 days earlier. Grant had not traveled with Lily. I knew that because his truck had appeared behind him during our video call that same evening. He had stood in the kitchen and complained that she was already asleep. Someone else had taken her. I called the local police from the bathroom with the faucet running. The dispatcher asked whether Grant had legal parental rights. I said yes, or at least I had believed he did until that night. She explained that without an existing custody order or evidence that Lily was in immediate danger, officers might treat the matter as a family dispute. She is 6 years old, I said. Her room has been emptied, her school records were altered, and my husband is claiming she never existed. That changed the dispatcher's tone. 2 officers arrived 23 minutes later. Grant met them at the front door before I could. By the time I came downstairs, he had arranged the white clinic folder on the coffee table. My wife has been under extreme stress, he said. She has a history of imagining a child. I handed one officer my Coast Guard emergency contact form and showed him the photograph of Lily's height chart. Then I opened a private cloud folder Grant did not know about. It contained copies of Lily's school portraits, her vaccination record, and the scanned birth certificate I had sent in May. Grant watched me do it. For the first time that evening, he seemed uncertain. The younger officer asked him where Lily was. Grant folded his arms. There is no Lily. The officer looked at the birth certificate again. Then, why is your name listed as the emergency contact on her mother's employment paperwork? Grant glanced toward me. Claire created those documents herself. That answer was clever enough to create doubt, but not clever enough to end the questions. The officer separated us. I told the older one everything I knew, including the suitcase and the Reno tag. She examined it herself, then asked Grant who had used it. My mother, he said. To travel where? I don't keep track of every trip she takes. Why is your wife's child's suitcase in your driveway? He rubbed the back of his neck. It was donated to us. Claire associates objects with the girl she imagines. I almost interrupted. The officer raised one finger, signaling me not to. Grant's explanation had shifted. First, Lily had never existed. Now he acknowledged that the suitcase was connected to my belief in her. The officers could not search the house without consent or a warrant, and they could not force Grant to reveal Evelyn's location. But they created a missing child report and contacted an on-call detective. They also advised me not to remain in the house. Grant objected immediately. She needs supervision. I am not under a court-ordered guardianship, I said. You signed the treatment agreement. The older officer lifted the clinic document. This is not a court order. Grant's face tightened. I packed only what I could carry. My uniform bag, work laptop, medications, passport, and a framed photograph from the back of the hall closet that he had somehow missed. It showed Lily sitting on my shoulders at a county fair, both of us squinting into the sun. Outside, I called the one person I trusted to give me direction without trying to control me. Marisol Vega had worked beside me in aviation operations for 7 years. She was not a lawyer or an investigator. She was simply precise, discreet, and impossible to rush. She picked me up at the end of the block. You look like you haven't slept in a week, she said. I may not sleep tonight. Then we'll use the time. At her apartment, Marisol helped me make 3 lists. What I knew, what I suspected, and what still required proof. Under known, I wrote the altered school contact, the forged treatment document, the deleted photographs, and the Reno baggage tag. Under suspected, I wrote Daniel Mercer. I found his last known address through an old child support record stored with my tax files. Marisol told me not to contact him directly. First, find out whether he still lives there. We searched public property records. Daniel did not own the Reno address anymore. The house had been sold 6 months earlier. Its new owner was Evelyn Mercer, not Grant's mother, Daniel's. I stared at the screen, confused, until Marisol enlarged the deed. The buyer's mailing address was not in Nevada. It was 3 streets from my house. And the name listed beside Evelyn's as co-owner was one I recognized from the clinic folder. Dr. Samuel Pritchard. Marisol read the deed twice before speaking. Pritchard isn't just connected to the clinic, she said. He owns the house where Lily may have been taken. I photographed the public record and added it to our list. Then I called the missing person detective whose number the officers had given me. Detective Lena Brooks listened without interrupting. She could not promise an immediate search based only on a baggage tag and the property record. But she contacted law enforcement in Reno and requested a welfare check at the address. Do not travel there yourself, she warned, and do not contact anyone connected to that property. By 8 the next morning, I was sitting across from a family law attorney named Dana Shaw. Marisol had found her through a military family support referral service, although Dana was a civilian lawyer and made it clear that my employment would not give me special treatment. I placed the clinic document, birth certificate, photographs, school information deed, and emergency contact form across her conference table. Dana began with the adoption. She searched the county court docket using the names of Grant, Lily, Daniel, and me. Then she called the clerk's office to confirm what the online system showed. No adoption petition had ever been filed. The forms Grant had brought home years earlier had gone nowhere. Legally, he was Lily's step-parent, not father. I stared at the silver bracelet on my wrist. Lily had a smaller matching one tucked somewhere among the belongings Grant had removed. He lied about loving her enough to adopt her, I said. Dana shook her head. We don't know that. We know he lied about completing it. The distinction hurt, but it mattered. Daniel Mercer remained Lily's legal father. His old consent to adoption had never terminated his rights because no adoption had occurred. That did not allow him to secretly remove her or erase me from her life, but it explained why Grant had needed Lily's birth certificate. Daniel could use it to prove paternity while Grant supplied evidence claiming I was mentally unstable. Dana searched Nevada's public court index. A restricted family matter had been filed 9 days earlier under Daniel's name. The public entry revealed little, only that it involved emergency custody of a minor. Because I had not been properly served, Dana contacted the Nevada attorney and arranged to obtain the accessible filings. The first documents arrived that afternoon. Daniel had asked a court for temporary emergency custody, claiming Lily had been abandoned by a mother experiencing severe psychiatric delusions. He stated that Grant had contacted him after becoming unable to manage my deterioration. Attached was Grant's sworn declaration. He claimed I had spent years setting a bedroom aside for a child who did not exist. I read that sentence 3 times. He had converted Lily's real room into evidence against my sanity doctor. Pritchard had supplied a brief clinical assessment stating that I presented a potential risk to myself and to the minor child she intermittently recognizes as her own. The assessment referred to 2 in-person appointments I had supposedly attended while stationed in Alaska. The signatures were similar to mine, but the appointment times overlapped with logged operational briefings. My employer could confirm my location, but Dana advised me not to collect statements informally. She would request certified records through the proper process. The school's legal administrator also preserved the changed emergency contact form and the travel authorization used to remove Lily. A copy was released to Detective Brooks after she submitted a formal request. The authorization carried my forged signature. Its notary stamp belonged to a commission that had expired the previous year. That should have weakened their plan. Instead, it frightened me. The document had not been designed to survive careful examination. It had only needed to look convincing long enough to get Lily out of school and onto an airplane. That evening, Reno police completed the welfare check. The house was empty. A neighbor reported seeing a girl matching Lily's description leave 2 days earlier with Daniel, Evelyn Mercer, and a man driving a dark rental SUV. The neighbor had also noticed something else. Movers had delivered several boxes before Lily arrived. One box displayed the name of a medical records company. Dana studied the photograph of the forged treatment plan. This was never only about custody, she said. She pointed to the recommendation Grant had placed in front of me. Supervised leave, financial guardianship, control of my accounts. While Daniel's family moved Lily from place to place, Grant had been preparing to have me declared incapable of managing my own life. Grant made his countermove before Dana could file anything. At 7 the next morning, my supervisor left a voicemail asking me not to report to the operations center until we had spoken with medical and personnel staff. Grant had emailed my unit during the night. He attached the forged clinical assessment and claimed I had threatened to use government resources to locate an imaginary child. He also stated that I had become aggressive when he tried to arrange psychiatric care. The Coast Guard did not accept his claims as fact, but my duties involved coordinating aircraft during emergencies. Until the situation was reviewed, I was placed on administrative leave. I understood the decision. That did not make it hurt less. My work had always been the part of my life governed by checklists, procedures, and verifiable information. Grant had reached into that world and contaminated it with the same lie he had placed inside our home. Marisol drove me to the base so I could surrender my access badge temporarily. My supervisor, Commander Ellis, met me outside the secure area. "This is not discipline," she said, "and no one has reached a conclusion. I know. Your attorney can provide the records showing where you were during the alleged appointments." "I know that too." She studied me for a moment. "Knowing something professionally and surviving it personally are different jobs." That sentence stayed with me. By noon, Grant had emptied our joint checking account. He could legally withdraw money from an account bearing both our names. But Dana immediately requested bank statements and advised me to open an individual account for my salary. The balance Grant left behind was $12.41. He also canceled the credit card I had used for groceries and changed the password to our home insurance portal. Then his attorney sent Dana a letter accusing me of harassment and demanding that I stop referring to Lily as my daughter until Nevada determined legal custody. I read the letter in Dana's office. "She came out of my body," I said. "They don't get to suspend that while they argue over paperwork." "No," Dana said, "but they want you angry enough to make a mistake." She had filed an emergency request in our home state seeking recognition of my parental rights and Lily's immediate return. The Nevada attorney challenged Daniel's emergency petition on the grounds that Lily had lived with me for years and had been removed through deception. None of that produced an instant order. Courts needed records, proper notice, and jurisdictional review. Daniel's attorney argued that Lily was safe and that moving her again could cause emotional harm. The same people who had frightened her into believing I had forgotten her were now presenting themselves as protectors of her stability. That afternoon, Detective Brooks called. The rental SUV seen at the Reno house had been returned at an airport in Sacramento. Daniel had rented it using his own license, but the company could not provide location data without legal process. There was still no confirmed address for Lily. I went into Marisol's bathroom and locked the door. For the first time since walking into the empty bedroom, I stopped functioning. I sat beside the bathtub and pressed one of Lily's old hair ties into my palm. It had been wrapped around the handle of the framed photograph I carried from the house. I pictured her in an unfamiliar room, wondering whether I was searching. Then another thought came, uglier than the first. Perhaps she believed them. Perhaps enough adults had repeated the lie that my daughter had begun editing me out of her own memory. Grant called while I was still on the floor. I let it ring twice before answering. "You can end this," he said. "Tell me where she is. Withdraw the police report. Sign the temporary guardianship papers. Once you're stable, we can discuss supervised contact." His voice trembled slightly on the last sentence. For one brief moment, I heard the frightened man beneath the strategy. Grant was not confident he would win. He was terrified of what would happen if the records were examined closely. "Did Daniel pay you?" I asked. Then he said, "You were never here, Claire. I raised her while you kept leaving." There it was. Not the whole motive, but the wound he had used to justify what he did. I had missed school events. I had accepted temporary assignments. I had trusted him to handle the routines I could not. Grant had turned every absence into proof that I did not deserve to return. I wanted to tell him exactly what I knew about Pritchard, Reno, and the forged notary stamp. Instead, I ended the call and saved the recording my phone had captured after Dana advised me that recording a conversation I participated in was lawful in our state. Publicly defending myself would have felt better. Quiet preparation had a better chance of bringing Lily home. The first person to break ranks was Daniel. He did not call me. He contacted Dana through his attorney and offered to provide Lily's current location in exchange for assurances that the police would not arrest him the moment he brought her home. Dana could not promise that. Neither could Detective Brooks. What she could offer was a documented opportunity for Daniel to cooperate voluntarily before investigators decided whether to seek criminal charges. His attorney arranged a video conference 2 days later. Daniel appeared from a parked car. He was 40 now, with gray beginning at his temples and the same habit of pressing his lips together before saying something he expected to regret. I had imagined confronting him for years. In those versions, I was composed and he was ashamed. The real meeting was less satisfying. "Is Lily safe?" I asked. "Yes. Where is she?" "With my aunt outside Eugene." Dana placed a hand near my arm, reminding me not to interrupt the process. Daniel said Grant had contacted him in April. They had never met before. Grant claimed I was experiencing severe psychiatric problems and had begun refusing to acknowledge Lily as a real child. He sent videos, Daniel said. What videos? Recordings of you walking past her without answering. You were saying there was nobody in the room. I stared at him. Those recordings don't exist. Daniel looked down. He had believed them because Grant also provided medical reports bearing Pritchard's name. Evelyn Mercer, Daniel's mother, recognized Pritchard because they had been romantically involved years earlier. When she contacted him, he confirmed Grant's story. Daniel admitted that he wanted to believe it. He had spent 6 years telling himself he had surrendered Lily because I had replaced him. Grant offered him a version of events in which I was dangerous. Grant was overwhelmed, and Daniel could become the father he had failed to be. I thought I was rescuing her, he said. You took her from school with forged permission. My mother handled the authorization. And when Lily asked for me, his face tightened. Grant said mentioning you reinforced the delusion. That answer did not excuse him. It showed me how willingly he had ignored anything that contradicted the story he wanted. Then Daniel played a voicemail. Grant's voice filled the conference room. Once Claire signs, the house and her salary access transfer temporarily. Pritchard says 6 months should be enough. After that, nobody can say you kidnapped Lily because Claire won't have legal capacity to challenge custody. Daniel had saved it after becoming suspicious about the money. Grant had originally told him the guardianship was only meant to protect Lily, but Evelyn later mentioned that Pritchard expected payment once my incapacity was established. Daniel began asking questions. 2 days after reaching Reno, he moved Lily to his aunt's house without telling Grant or Pritchard. That explained why they had kept changing locations. It also changed how I understood the plan. Grant had not been paid by Daniel. Grant was trying to pay Pritchard. Dana obtained authorization from Daniel's attorney to review several emails he had received. One included a proposed fee agreement from a consulting company registered to Pritchard. Payment would come from the refinancing of my house after a guardian gained authority over my property. The amount was $85,000. Grant had accumulated debt I knew nothing about. Private loans, failed investments, and unpaid taxes associated with a small contracting business he claimed had closed years earlier. The joint account had not been emptied simply to punish me. He needed cash to keep creditors from discovering what remained of our equity. My absences had made his story believable to Daniel. My trust had made the financial plan possible. And my greatest mistake had been assuming that because Grant managed Lily's daily life with tenderness, he would never use that closeness against either of us. Detective Brooks coordinated with Oregon authorities. A child welfare worker visited Daniel's aunt's home and confirmed Lily was physically unharmed. She appeared frightened and repeatedly asked whether speaking about me would get someone in trouble. The court authorized temporary protective supervision while jurisdiction was reviewed. I was not permitted to rush to Oregon and take her. Instead, Lily would be interviewed by a trained specialist, and any contact with me would be introduced carefully, because the adults around her had spent weeks undermining her sense of reality. Bringing her home was no longer the only goal. I had to help her trust that home and I were real. Lily's first conversation with me lasted 4 minutes. A child therapist named Dr. Aisha Benton arranged the call from Daniel's aunt's house. She warned me beforehand not to question Lily about Grant, the flights, or the documents. I was not to ask her to choose between adults or promise that she would immediately come home. She needs to experience you as predictable, Dr. Benton said, not persuasive. When Lily appeared on the screen, she was sitting in a large wooden chair with her knees tucked beneath her nightgown. Her hair had been cut to her chin. Grant had always insisted it remain long because he liked braiding it before school. "Hi, Bug," I said. She looked toward someone outside the camera frame. "Am I allowed to call you Mom?" The question almost pulled every careful word out of me. "You can call me, whatever feels safe today." She studied my face as though checking it against a memory. "Dad said you forgot me." "I didn't forget you." "Which dad?" I understood then how thoroughly the adults had confused her. Grant had taught her that I imagined her. Daniel had arrived calling himself her real father. Each man had used a different explanation, but both required Lily to distrust the life she remembered. "I mean Grant," she said eventually. "He said your brain made mistakes." "My brain makes mistakes sometimes," I told her. "Everyone's does. But you are not one of them." Dr. Benton ended the call before I could say more. Afterward, I sat in Dana's conference room, staring at the empty chair across from me. Lily should have been home arguing about bedtime, not speaking to her mother under professional supervision. Over the next 3 weeks, the calls became longer. Lily showed me a rock she had painted like a ladybug. I read 2 pages from the book we had abandoned before my deployment. Sometimes she spoke freely. Other times, she asked whether the people listening would be angry if she said she missed me. Daniel continued cooperating. He surrendered the emails, voicemail, and messages Grant had sent him. In exchange, his attorney argued that his voluntary disclosure should be considered when custody and possible charges were reviewed. I hated that cooperation might protect him from the harshest consequences. Dana reminded me that finding Lily quickly had depended on it. Justice and usefulness were not the same thing, but sometimes they had to occupy the same room. Grant was offered an opportunity to attend mediation and disclose every document he and Pritchard had created. Through his attorney, he refused wrongdoing. He claimed Daniel had misunderstood a plan intended only to protect Lily and me. Then we received what looked like our first victory. My employer completed its preliminary review. Certified duty logs, vessel records, and witness statements proved I had been thousands of miles away during both supposed appointments with Pritchard. My access badge remained suspended pending the broader investigation, but the clinical assessment was no longer treated as credible. 2 days later, the Nevada court dismissed Daniel's emergency petition. I expected Lily to be placed on the next flight home. Instead, the Oregon Child Welfare Agency requested a temporary transition plan. Lily had begun waking at night and hiding her belongings beneath the bed. Benton believed another abrupt removal could deepen her fear that adults could relocate her without warning. The court allowed Lily to remain with Daniel's aunt for 10 additional days under supervision, while daily contact with me increased. It felt like punishment for showing restraint. Then Dana received the guardianship filing Grant had prepared in our home county. He had not submitted it after I returned. He had submitted it 11 days before. The petition included a proposed order granting him authority over my finances, medical decisions, and residence. Pritchard's assessment was attached, along with a statement from a second witness who claimed to have observed my delusions. The witness was Grant's accountant, the same accountant whose signature appeared on documents connected to Grant's hidden contracting debts. A hearing had already been scheduled. If we failed to defeat the guardianship petition, Grant could still use a temporary order to interfere with my home, my income, and Lily's transition back to me even while the custody case moved in my favor. Dana closed the file. "Tomorrow isn't about proving you're a good mother," she said. "It's about proving they built a legal emergency out of events that never happened." That evening, I placed Lily's framed photograph beside the certified duty logs, the expired notary record, the financial statements, and Daniel's voicemail. For weeks, I had been waiting to get my daughter back. By morning, I would have to defend my right to control my own life first. The guardianship hearing took place in a courtroom smaller than Lily's classroom. Grant sat beside his attorney with his hands folded on the table, Doctor. Pritchard occupied the witness bench behind them. The accountant, Nolan Price, had appeared remotely, his face framed by an office wall covered in certificates. Dana had warned me that the hearing would not decide custody, criminal responsibility, or the future of my marriage. The judge was considering one question: whether I lacked the ability to manage my own affairs and required an emergency guardian. Grant's attorney began with the clinical assessment. Pritchard testified that Grant had contacted him after becoming concerned about my behavior. He claimed he had evaluated me twice through secure video appointments and once in person. Dana handed him the document dated March 18. "You testified that this appointment occurred in your office." "Yes, and you confirmed the patient's identity." She presented identification. "What kind?" Pritchard hesitated. "A government credential." Dana placed my certified vessel records on the evidence screen. At the exact time Pritchard claimed I had been sitting in his office, I had been aboard a Coast Guard vessel more than 2,000 miles away. The operations log contained my signature. 3 crew members had supplied sworn statements. Security records showed I had entered the communications room 17 minutes before the alleged appointment and remained there for nearly 2 hours. Pritchard adjusted his glasses. "It may have been a remote session. You just testified it was in Fern. I may be confusing the dates." Dana showed him the second assessment. That appointment overlapped with another documented briefing in Alaska. Then she asked for his patient intake records, payment receipt, appointment confirmations, and identification logs. He had none. Grant's attorney argued that Pritchard had relied on information supplied by my husband, and that imperfect records did not prove intentional wrongdoing. Dana did not argue with him. She called Grant. He testified that I had become increasingly detached from reality during my deployment. He described the empty bedroom as a space I had decorated for an imaginary child. "Why did you repaint it?" Dana asked, to reduce her distress. "When?" A few days before she returned, Dana displayed the school counselor's preserved notes. Lily had described Grant packing her bedroom 11 days earlier. Then came the emergency contact form Grant had signed as Lily's adoptive father. Grant looked at the signature for a long time. "I signed many school papers. You claimed under oath that Lily never existed." "I meant Claire's version of Lily did not exist." His attorney objected that the question distorted his testimony. The judge allowed Dana to continue but instructed her to remain focused on my capacity. She played Grant's recorded call. "Withdraw the police report. Sign the temporary guardianship papers. Once you're stable, we can discuss supervised contact." Grant's shoulders lowered as his own voice filled the courtroom. Dana stopped the recording. "Supervised contact with whom?" Grant looked at me for the first time. "With Lily." The admission was not dramatic. He said her name almost gently. That made it worse. He tried to explain that he had been Lily's daily parent while I traveled. He said my absences had left him carrying school, meals, illnesses, and bedtime alone. When his business debts grew, he became convinced I would leave and take both Lily and the house. "I was afraid of losing my family," he said. "So you removed the child and attempted to control Claire's finances?" "I was trying to keep things together." The final evidence came from Nolan Price. Under questioning, he admitted Grant owed substantial taxes and private loans. He also admitted that the proposed guardianship documents had been shared with him before the alleged medical evaluation occurred. The file metadata confirmed it. Grant had emailed Nolan a draft petition describing my supposed diagnosis 3 days before Pritchard claimed to have evaluated me. The diagnosis had been written before the examination designed to support it. The judge denied the emergency guardianship request. She ordered that Grant have no authority over my finances or medical decisions and directed the questionable records to the appropriate professional and investigative agencies. There was no speech about justice, just an order entered into the record. Outside the courtroom, Dana's phone rang. The Oregon court had approved Lily's return. She would arrive the following afternoon. Lily did not run into my arms at the airport. She stepped through the security doors holding Dr. Benton's hand, wearing a yellow backpack I had never seen, and carrying a clear plastic bag filled with snacks, crayons, and court documents. For one terrible second, she looked directly at me and stopped. I remained beside Dana rather than moving toward her. "Hi, Bug," I said. Lily studied my coat, my shoes, and the silver bracelet on my wrist. Then she looked at her own smaller bracelet, which someone had found inside one of the boxes moved from her bedroom. "They match," she said. "They always did." She released Dr. Benton's hand and walked toward me. She did not hug me. She slipped 2 fingers around my wrist and held the bracelets side by side. That was enough. The transition plan allowed me to take her to Marisol's apartment, where we would stay until the house had been inspected and Grant's access had been legally addressed. Dr. Benton accompanied us for the first hour. Lily asked where her bed was. I told her the truth in language she could carry. "Grant moved your things without asking us. We're going to find what we can and replace what we can't." "Did he throw me away?" "No." The answer came quickly, but I made myself continue. "He made choices that hurt you. Adults are responsible for those choices. You were never the problem." That night, Lily slept on the couch beside me. Every 40 minutes, she opened her eyes and checked that I was still there. Grant was served with a temporary order preventing him from entering the house or contacting Lily while the custody and investigation matters continued. He moved into his brother's apartment. Detective Brooks referred the forged school authorization, clinical documents, and financial records to prosecutors. Dr. Pritchard's licensing board opened an investigation. The notary whose expired stamp had been copied confirmed she had never met me, Grant, Evelyn, or Daniel. No one was arrested in a dramatic scene. The consequences arrived as letters, interviews, restrictions, and deadlines. Grant's attorney negotiated his surrender of the house keys and Lily's remaining property. He also agreed that the money removed from the joint account would be treated as marital funds subject to repayment during the divorce. Some of it was already gone. We recovered less than half. Daniel received temporary supervised visitation rights after accepting responsibility for removing Lily without confirming Grant's claims. His cooperation mattered, but it did not erase what he had done. The court required all contact to follow Dr. Benton's recommendations. Evelyn Mercer was barred from contact during the investigation into the forged travel authorization. Grant was not allowed visitation at all until a child specialist determined whether contact could occur without further harm. He requested one meeting with me through our attorneys. Dana advised against it unless I needed something specific. I realized I did. I needed him to tell me where Lily's belongings were. We met in a mediation room with both attorneys present. Grant looked smaller without the house, the documents, or the authority he had tried to take from me. Most of her things are in a storage unit, he said. Most? He rubbed his thumb against the edge of the table. I threw away the drawings. And the mattress. Why the drawings? They had dates on them. The answer landed harder than any apology could have. He had disked 6 years of refrigerator art because crayon dates could prove Lily existed. Grant looked toward the window. I did love her. Then why did you tell her she was imaginary? His eyes filled, but I felt no urge to comfort him. Because if she believed you were sick, she might forgive me for sending her away. That was the close he came to admitting what he had done. He said the debts had begun with a failed renovation contract. He hid them because he feared I would see him as unreliable. Each lie required another. When creditors threatened the house, Pritchard suggested guardianship as a way to gain time and access to equity. And Lily? I asked. Grant swallowed. Daniel was supposed to keep her temporarily. I thought once the money was fixed, I could bring her back. You erased her room. I needed you to look unstable. There was no explanation after that. Only motive. I left the room without forgiving him. 2 days later, a locksmith met me at the house. After changing every exterior lock, he placed the old keys on the kitchen counter. One belonged to Grant, one belonged to me, and the smallest had once opened Lily's bedroom door. I carried that key upstairs, where she stood in the gray room looking at the pale rectangle beside the baseboard. Her handwritten measurement was still visible. Lily touched it with one finger. Can we leave that part? Yes, I said. We had lost photographs, drawings, money, trust, and years of assumptions about the man who had helped raise her. But we left the mark uncovered. Not as evidence for a court, as proof for Lily that no matter how carefully someone repainted the walls, she had been there all along. 4 months later, Lily and I were standing on a stepladder, pressing glow-in-the-dark stars onto her ceiling. She had chosen a new bed with drawers underneath, because she no longer liked leaving anything where someone could carry it away without waking her. Dr. Benton told me not to argue with that need. Safety sometimes began as control before it softened into trust. So Lily kept her favorite drawings in the top drawer, her bracelets in a small wooden box, and the backpack packed with pajamas beside the closet. Over time, she stopped checking it every night. We recovered most of her books from Grant's storage unit, along with the blue-knobbed shelf and 3 boxes of clothing. The toys smelled like dust and cardboard. A few made Lily uncomfortable, so we donated them rather than forcing the past back into place. The drawings Grant destroyed could not be replaced. Instead, Lily began making new ones. The first showed our house with every window colored yellow. The second showed Marisol eating pancakes at our kitchen table. In the third, Lily drew herself between 2 adults. One was me. The other had no face. I did not ask which father it represented. Grant eventually accepted an agreement resolving the divorce and property issues. His share of the home equity was reduced to account for the joint money he had taken and the debts he had concealed. The forged documents remained part of an ongoing investigation, and he surrendered his professional contracting license while financial regulators reviewed his business records. Dr. Pritchard's license was suspended pending a formal hearing. Nolan Price lost several clients after investigators confirmed he had helped prepare financial documents connected to the guardianship plan. None of those developments restored Lily's trust. Grant was later allowed to send her one therapist-reviewed letter each month. She chose not to read the first 3. I stored them unopened in a locked file. Daniel's supervised visits continued twice a month. He did not become the father he had imagined he could suddenly be. He became a man learning, slowly and uncomfortably, that regret did not entitle him to closeness. Sometimes Lily enjoyed seeing him. Sometimes she refused to go. The adults finally stopped forcing her feelings into a cleaner shape. I returned to work gradually. My access was restored after the internal review confirmed that Grant's claims had been fabricated. For several months, I accepted only local assignments. Later, when a temporary deployment opportunity arose, I declined it. Not because Grant had been right about my absence. He had not been. I declined because I was finally honest about what Lily and I needed during that season. Strength was not proving I could leave without consequences. It was choosing with my eyes open instead of assuming love would cover every gap. One evening, Lily asked whether we could measure her again. She stood against the gray wall while I placed a ruler flat on her head. She had grown almost an inch since coming home. I marked the line in pencil. "Should we paint the room now?" she asked. The gray walls had remained untouched because every time I mentioned changing them, she said not yet. "What color?" I asked. "Blue. But not over this." She pointed to the old measurement Grant had failed to cover. "Lily, age 6, 46 inches. We painted around it." The next morning, sunlight fell across the new walls and stopped at the pale rectangle where the old color remained. It was not beautiful in the way professionally finished rooms were beautiful. The edges were uneven, and the pencil marks did not match. But Lily liked it. So did I. For a long time, I believed the worst thing Grant had done was remove my daughter from our house. Later, I understood that he had tried to remove certainty itself. He wanted Lily to doubt that I remembered her, and he wanted me to doubt whether my own life could be trusted. Recovery did not come from one ruling or one piece of evidence. It came from repetition. I was there when Lily woke from nightmares. I was there when she left for school. I answered when she called. I explained where I was going and when I would return. Then I returned when I said I would. Months passed before she stopped asking whether I might forget her. The last time she asked, we were lying beneath the stars on her ceiling. "No," I told her, "but if you ever feel afraid, you can ask me again." She considered that. Then she rolled onto her side and closed her eyes. The room was no longer evidence of what someone had erased. It was simply my daughter's room again. If Lily's story stayed with you, share the moment when you first understood what Grant was truly trying to take from us. And if you value stories about women who protect their families through patience, evidence, and difficult choices, you're welcome to join me for another story of truth, consequences, and rebuilding.